I was scraping the mud off my boots in a safe house 3,000 miles away when the satellite phone buzzed. It wasn't command. It was my wife, Ivy. She wasn't crying about a car crash or a fever. She was hyperventilating. He fell, Hunter. The tiger, it ripped his leg. Oh God, there's so much blood. But before the line cut out, I heard something that froze the blood in my veins. A man's voice, calm and cold, whispering in the background. Tell him it was an accident, or you lose everything. My son didn't fall. He was thrown. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. The flight back to the States was a blur of engine noise and dark thoughts. I sat in the back of a C-130 transport plane, surrounded by crates of ammunition, staring at a crumpled photo of Ryder I kept taped inside my helmet. He was 7 years old. He had my eyes, but he had Ivy's gentle spirit. He was the kind of kid who was afraid of the dark, who wouldn't even jump off the high dive at the community pool. The idea that he had climbed a 12-foot safety barrier at a zoo and fallen into a tiger enclosure was impossible. It defied physics. It defied everything I knew about my son. But that whisper on the phone, that was what made my hands shake. I've hunted insurgents in mountains and tracked targets through jungles. I know what fear sounds like. Ivy was terrified, but not just for Ryder. She was scared of the person holding the phone. I landed at the base and didn't even stop to change out of my fatigues. I threw a civilian jacket over my t-shirt to hide the tactical gear, grabbed my duffel bag, and drove 90 miles an hour to St. Jude's Trauma Center. The hospital was freezing. It smelled like bleach and old coffee. My boots squeaked on the linoleum as I sprinted toward the ICU waiting room. I expected to find Ivy alone, curled up in a chair, a mess of tears and grief. I was ready to hold her. I was ready to be the strong husband she needed. But when I rounded the corner, I stopped dead in my tracks. Ivy wasn't alone. She was standing near the vending machines, looking small and fragile in a gray cardigan. But standing over her, looming over her, was a man I had never met. He was wearing a navy blue suit that probably cost more than my car. His hair was slicked back, his posture arrogant. He looked like he owned the place. And he was touching her. His hand was resting on the small of her back, rubbing slow, possessive circles. Ivy wasn't pulling away. She was leaning into him, her head bowed, listening to whatever he was murmuring into her ear. The air in the hallway seemed to drop 20 degrees. A red haze crept into the corners of my vision. That was my wife. That was my grieving wife, and a stranger was holding her like he had the right to. Ivy, I said, my voice rough from the dry air of the plane. She jumped as if I'd fired a gun. She spun around, her eyes wide and red-rimmed. When she saw me, relief washed over her face, followed instantly by a look of sheer panic. She stepped away from the man quickly, smoothing her hair. Hunter, she choked out. You made it. She rushed to hug me. I caught her, but my body was stiff. She smelled like antiseptic and expensive cologne, musk and cedarwood. It wasn't my scent. It was his. Where is he? I asked, looking over the top of her head at the man in the suit. Is he alive? He's in surgery. Ivy sobbed into my chest. They're trying to save the leg. The doctor said the bone was crushed. The tiger, Hunter, it dragged him. I gently pushed her back so I could look her in the eyes. Who is this? I nodded toward the stranger. The man stepped forward before Ivy could answer. He extended a hand that was manicured and soft. He wore a gold Rolex that caught the fluorescent lights. Sergeant, the man said, his voice smooth like oil. I'm Dominic. I own the Sanctuary Zoo. I cannot express how devastated I am. This is a tragedy, a complete and utter tragedy. I didn't shake his hand. I just stared at it until he slowly lowered it, clearing his throat awkwardly. Why are you here? I asked. My voice was low, a rumble that usually made new recruits nervous. If you own the zoo, shouldn't you be talking to the police? Or fixing your fences? I wanted to be here personally, Dominic said, stepping closer to Ivy again. He stood too close, much too close, to ensure your family receives the best care. I've already spoken to the chief of surgery. I'm covering all the costs. Private rooms, rehabilitation, everything. We have insurance, I said flatly. This goes beyond insurance, Dominic said, a tight, practiced smile plastered on his face. He reached into his inside jacket pocket and pulled out a thick, creamy envelope. Actually, while we wait for the surgeons, I was hoping we could handle some of the administrative unpleasantness, just to get it out of the way so you can focus on healing. Administrative unpleasantness. I repeated, it's a standard liability waiver and a settlement agreement, Dominic said, tapping the envelope against his palm. It's a very generous offer, Hunter. $2 million. Tax-free. Effective immediately upon signature. I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at Ivy. She was staring at the floor, twisting her wedding ring round and round on her finger. She wouldn't meet my eyes. You want me to sign a settlement while my son is getting his legs sewn back together? I asked, stepping into Dominic's personal space. I was 3 inches taller than him and built from years of carrying 100-pound rucksacks. Dominic didn't back down, though. He held his ground with the confidence of a man who has never been punched in the face. It's not just money, Hunter, Ivy whispered, finally looking up. Her voice was trembling. It's for privacy. Dominic says the news crews are already outside. We don't want Ryder's face all over TV, do we? We need to protect him. Protect him? I scoffed. Ivy, he was in a tiger cage. The time to protect him was yesterday. I looked at Dominic. I looked at the way he looked at Ivy, not with sympathy, but with expectation, like he was waiting for her to deliver something. Did you see it happen? I asked Dominic. I was in my office, Dominic lied. I could tell he was lying by the way he blinked. Too slow, too deliberate. The security cameras malfunctioned, unfortunately, but witnesses say Ryder climbed the unauthorized maintenance ladder near the VIP deck. The VIP deck? I frowned. Ivy, I thought you said you were just visiting the petting zoo. The silence that followed was deafening. Ivy's face went pale. Dominic stiffened, realizing he had slipped up. We treated ourselves. Ivy stammered, her eyes darting to Dominic for help. It was a special occasion. What special occasion? I asked. Ryder's birthday was 3 months ago. Our anniversary is in December. Dominic cut in, his voice hardening. Look, take the envelope, Sergeant. You're an emotional man right now. You're not thinking clearly. But you need to think about your future. Fighting this, investigating this, it gets expensive and ugly. You don't want to make enemies in this town. He held the envelope out, practically shoving it into my chest. I took the envelope. I felt the weight of the papers inside. $2 million to shut up. $2 million to agree that my 7-year-old son was at fault. I looked Dominic dead in the eye. You think you can buy my son's leg? I asked softly. I think everyone has a price, Dominic smirked. I ripped the envelope in half. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet waiting room. I tore it again and again until the pieces fluttered down to the sterile white tiles like snow. Dominic's smirk vanished. His eyes went cold and dead. That was a mistake, he whispered. Get out, I said. If I see you near my family again, I'm not calling a lawyer. And I'm not calling the police. Dominic straightened his jacket. He looked at Ivy one last time, a look of warning, and walked away, his expensive shoes clicking down the hall. I turned to my wife. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. But she didn't look relieved that I had defended our son. She looked terrified. Why did you do that? She whispered. Hunter, you don't know what he can do. I don't care what he can do, I said, grabbing her shoulders. I want to know why you were on the VIP deck, Ivy. And I want to know why that man looks at you like he owns you. I don't know what you want me to say, Ivy whispered, yanking her shoulders out of my hands. Our son is in surgery, and you're grilling me like I'm on trial. Because something doesn't add up, I said. You told me you were at the petting zoo. I jerked my chin toward the empty hallway where Dominic had disappeared, said VIP deck. Those aren't the same thing. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. Does it matter right now? It matters to me, I said. It matters to Ryder. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Her gaze slid toward the doors Dominic had used, as if she expected him to come back and rescue her from this conversation. A doctor in green scrubs pushed through the ICU doors, saving her. "Family of Ryder?" he called out. Both of us stepped forward at the same time. Ivy's fingers clamped around my sleeve like a vice. "How is he?" I asked. The doctor glanced at my uniform half visible under the jacket. "You the father?" "Yeah." He took off his cap, and that alone told me it was bad. We stabilized him. The tiger tore deep into the thigh. We were able to reconstruct most of the muscle, but there was serious blood loss. He's in a coma for now. Next 24 hours are critical. Is he going to walk?" Ivy choked out. "We won't know for sure," the doctor said. "But kids are resilient. He has a shot." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. A shot was more than I'd had on that plane. "Can we see him?" I asked. "One at a time. Only for a few minutes." Ivy moved instantly, but the doctor held up a hand. "Let Dad go first. Just 5 minutes." She stepped back, her face tightening. For a second, she looked like she'd argue. Then she forced a smile. "Go," she said. "Tell him Mommy's right outside." I followed the doctor through the heavy doors into the ICU. Machines beeped in different rhythms, like a broken orchestra. Ryder lay in the middle of it all, small and pale under a web of wires and tubes. His leg was wrapped in so much bandage it looked like a cast of plaster. I'd seen guys hit by shrapnel, guys missing limbs. It never felt like this. I pulled a chair up to the bed and sat down, my knees suddenly weak. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. My voice came out rough. "It's Dad. You did good, okay? You hung on. I'm here now." His eyelids fluttered, just a twitch. I took his hand, careful of the 4. "I know you're tough," I said. "But you don't have to be tough right now. You just rest." "I'm not going anywhere." I stayed there until the nurse tapped my shoulder and told me my time was up. On my way out, I paused at the doorway and looked back at him. "I promise you," I whispered, so low only I could hear it. "Whatever really happened, I'm going to find out." When I walked back into the waiting room, Ivy was pacing. Her phone was in her hand, but the screen went dark as soon as she saw me. She shoved it into her pocket too fast. "How did he look?" she asked. "Like a kid who got put in a cage with a predator," I said. "You were on your phone, calling Dominic again." Her jaw clenched. "I was checking on paperwork. Insurance. You ripped up $2 million, Hunter. We have a mortgage. Medical bills. You're gone half the year. Do you have any idea what that money could have done for us?" "There it is," I said quietly. "You cared more about the check than the truth." "That's not fair," she snapped. I watched our son get dragged across concrete. I heard his bones. Her voice broke. "Don't you dare tell me I don't care about the truth." "Then stop lying to me," I said. "What were you really doing at that zoo?" She swallowed hard. "He offered us the VIP tour, okay? Because I've taken Ryder there a lot. He recognizes us. You didn't think it was weird that a millionaire zoo owner knows my kid by name?" I asked. She hugged herself, shivering. "You don't know how things are when you're gone." There it was. The dig. The pivot. "Explain it to me," I said. "Because from where I'm standing, you're more scared of that guy than you are of losing our son." Before she could answer, someone else walked into the waiting room. A man in a tan sport coat, no tie, badge clipped to his belt. His hair was cut short, cop style. He scanned the room, then made a beeline for us. "Mr. Hunter?" he asked. "Yeah." He flipped the badge up with his thumb. "Grant. City Police. I'm sorry about your boy. Mind if I ask you a couple questions?" "Now," I said. "He just got out of surgery." "Won't take long," Grant said. "Just trying to get the timeline straight." Ivy stiffened beside me. "Dominic already gave his statement," Grant added. "Like that should make me feel better." "Of course he did," I muttered. Grant pulled a small notebook from his pocket. "Where were you when the incident occurred?" "Overseas," I said. "Deployment. And you flew straight here?" "Yes." Grant scribbled something. "Did your wife tell you anything about what happened before you arrived?" "She said he fell," I replied. "From a railing." Grant nodded. That's consistent with the report. Your son climbed a restricted ladder to the observation platform and lost his balance. We have it recorded as an accident at this time. Restricted ladder? I repeated. How does a 7-year-old get to a restricted ladder? We're still reviewing procedures, Grant said. But there were signs. Yeah, signs stop adults from doing stupid things, I said. They don't stop kids from being in the wrong place because someone put them there. Grant's eyes flicked to Ivy, then back to me. I understand you're upset, Mr. Hunter, but there's no indication of foul play. Did you see the footage? I asked. He hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. The camera covering that area malfunctioned. Tech issues. Convenient, I said. Grant closed his notebook. Look, I know you're military. I respect that. But the owner is cooperating, covering all costs, offering a settlement. I tore that up. I cut in. I heard, Grant said dryly. Off the record? This town. Dominic donates to every charity, every campaign. People like him don't like noise. If I were you, I'd focus on your boy. Let this go before it gets messy. Was that a warning? I asked. It was friendly advice, he said. He gave Ivy a quick nod. Mrs. Hunter. He walked out without waiting for a response. Silence settled between us again. So that's it, I said. He makes some donations, and the cops roll over? That's the whole investigation. They're doing what they can, Ivy said weakly. No, I said. They're doing what Dominic will allow. I leaned against the wall, suddenly tired down to my bones. Combat tired. But under the exhaustion was something sharper. Focus. I need you to tell me something, I said. That man on the phone when you called me. Who was he? She froze. What are you talking about? When you first called, I said. You were sobbing. And then I heard a man's voice say, tell him it was an accident, or you lose everything. Whose voice was that? Her lips parted. A full second passed before sound came out. You must have misheard, she said. The line was bad. There was chaos. People yelling. Sirens. No, I said quietly. I know what a threat sounds like. She slowly backed away from me, shaking her head. I can't do this right now. I can't. I need air. Ivy, but she was already moving, heading down the hallway in the same direction Dominic had gone earlier. I watched her go. The wife who used to wait at the window for me to come home from training now couldn't get away from me fast enough. I sank into a chair, elbows on my knees, hands clasped so tight my knuckles ached. The cops weren't going to help. Dominic had money, lawyers, connections. Ivy was folding under something I didn't understand yet. If I wanted the truth, the real truth about what happened at that cage, I was going to have to do what I do best. Stop asking. And start hunting. The walk back to the waiting room felt like marching through mud. My son's words echoed in my head, louder than any explosion I'd ever survived. The man who pushed me, not fell, pushed. When I got back to the waiting room, Ivy was gone. A note was left on the plastic chair. Went home to get fresh clothes and check on the house. Text me when you're done. Love you. Love you. The words felt like a lie written in blue ink. I crumpled the note and tossed it into the trash can, right on top of the shredded settlement agreement. I didn't text her. Instead, I walked out of the hospital into the cool night air. It was 2 a.m. The city was asleep, but my mind was racing at 100 miles an hour. Most fathers would go home, drink a whiskey, and try to sleep. But I wasn't just a father. I was a hunter. And hunters don't sleep when the prey is still out there. I drove past my own house. I saw the lights were on in the living room, Ivy's car in the driveway. Good. She was distracted. I kept driving until the city lights faded and the road turned into the winding, tree-lined route leading to the outskirts of town. A massive, wrought iron gate loomed ahead, the Sanctuary Wildlife Preserve and Zoo. The place was closed, obviously. A security guard sat in a booth near the entrance, watching a portable TV. High fences topped with barbed wire stretched into the darkness on either side. I parked my truck a half-mile down the road, tucked into a dense patch of woods. I swapped my civilian jacket for a dark hoodie and pulled a pair of black tactical gloves from my glove compartment. Old habits die hard. I didn't go for the front gate. I moved through the woods, circling the perimeter until I found a drainage culvert that ran under the fence. It was tight and smelled of rot, but I crawled through it without hesitation. I emerged inside the zoo. It was eerie at night. The air was filled with the sounds of animals, low growls, hoots, the rustle of straw. I moved silently, sticking to the shadows, avoiding the pools of light cast by the security lamps. I knew exactly where I was going. The tiger enclosure. It wasn't hard to find. It was the centerpiece of the zoo, a massive, open-air habitat designed to look like a jungle temple. Yellow police tape fluttered in the breeze, cordoning off a section of the viewing platform. I ducked under the tape and approached the railing. The drop was about 15 feet into a moat, followed by the grassy enclosure. I looked at the railing itself. Ivy had said it gave way. Dominic had said Ryder climbed a maintenance ladder. I inspected the wood. It was sturdy teak, bolted into concrete. There was no rot, no rust. But as I ran my gloved hand along the underside of the top rail, my fingers brushed against something. Empty bolt holes. I pulled out a small penlight, shielding the beam with my hand. I examined the bracket where the railing met the post. The bolts hadn't snapped. They were missing. The threads were clean. Someone had unscrewed them. This wasn't negligence. This was preparation. I looked up. Directly above this section of the railing, about 20 feet higher, was a glass-walled structure jutting out from the main administration building. It looked like a luxury apartment suspended in the air. The VIP deck. There was a spiral staircase leading up to it, marked with a sign, private, authorized personnel only. I checked for cameras. There was one mounted on a pole nearby, pointed directly at the spot where Ryder had fallen. But the lens was dark. No red recording light. The security cameras malfunctioned, Dominic had said. Yeah, right. I climbed the spiral stairs, moving slow and low. The door at the top was locked, but it was a standard keypad lock. I didn't have time to hack it. I shimmied around the side of the deck, finding a sliding glass door that was cracked open an inch. I slipped inside. The room smelled like Dominic. That same expensive cologne, mixed with stale alcohol. It was lavish. Leather couches, a fully stocked bar, animal skins on the floor. It was a bachelor pad hidden inside a zoo. I scanned the room. On a low coffee table, there was an empty bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. I moved closer. One glass had a faint smudge on the rim. Lipstick. A specific shade of dusty rose. The same shade Ivy wore every day. The same shade she had been wearing at the hospital tonight. My stomach churned. They had been here. Drinking champagne. Celebrating what? While my son was downstairs. I walked to the edge of the deck. From here, you had a perfect view of the tiger pit below. You could see everything. I closed my eyes and pictured the scene. Dominic and Ivy up here, drinking. Ryder down below, wandering near the broken railing. Then I remembered the employee Dominic had mentioned. The one who saw Ryder climbing the ladder. If there was a witness, why was the railing unscrewed? Something didn't add up. If this was a setup to kill my son, why do it so messily? Why not a car accident? Why a tiger? Unless the tiger wasn't the point. Unless the fall was the point. I turned back to the room. I needed proof. I started rifling through the drawers of a heavy oak desk in the corner. Financial papers, permits, invoices for animal feed. Boring stuff. Then I found a logbook tucked under a stack of magazines. It was a shift schedule. I flipped to today's date. Security, OFF duty, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Maintenance, OFF duty, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. VIP tour, Dominic plus guest. He had cleared the staff. He had emptied the zoo of witnesses. I pulled out my phone and snapped photos of the logbook, the lipstick-stained glass, and the missing bolts on the railing below. As I was about to leave, headlights swept across the wall. A car was coming up the service road. I froze. I moved to the window and peered out. A black SUV pulled up to the administration building. The door opened, and Dominic stepped out. He wasn't alone. A man in a sheriff's uniform got out of the driver's seat. They were laughing. Dominic slapped the sheriff on the back and handed him a thick envelope, just like the one he had tried to give me. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering. Don't worry about the soldier. Dominic's voice drifted up through the open slider. He's a grunt. He doesn't have the brains to figure this out. And if he tries, well, you know what to do. Just keep your nose clean, Dom. The sheriff chuckled. I can bury the report, but I can't bury a body if you make a mess. The kid will be fine, Dominic said dismissively. Or he won't. Either way, the mother is on board. She knows the drill. The mother is on board. My breath hitched. Ivy. She wasn't just scared. She was part of the plan. I waited until they went inside the main office below. Then I slipped out the glass door, down the spiral stairs, and melted back into the shadows of the tiger enclosure. I made it back to my truck without being seen. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage. I sat in the dark cab for a long time, staring at the photos on my phone. The missing bolts, the lipstick, the payoff to the sheriff. They thought I was just a dumb grunt. They thought I would take the money or get scared off. They didn't know who they were dealing with. I wasn't going to the police. The sheriff was bought. I wasn't going to a lawyer. Dominic had money to burn. I started the engine. I was going to war. And the first battlefield was my own kitchen. I didn't go back to the hospital. I drove home. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Ivy's car was there, parked crookedly, like she'd been in a rush. I killed the engine and sat there for a minute, looking at the house we'd bought 3 years ago. It was supposed to be our sanctuary, a place to raise Ryder away from the chaos of base housing. Now, it looked like enemy territory. I let myself in quietly. The air inside felt stale, suffocating. I moved through the living room, my boots silent on the carpet. I could hear soft breathing coming from the master bedroom. Ivy was asleep, or pretending to be. I didn't go to her. I went to the garage. My deployment box was tucked away on the top shelf, behind the Christmas decorations and old camping gear. It was a heavy, locked Pelican case that Ivy never touched. She hated it. She said it reminded her that I could leave at any moment. I keyed in the code and popped the latches. Inside wasn't just my standard issue gear. Over 15 years, you collect things. Tools of the trade that don't appear on any official inventory list. I pulled out a small black pouch containing 3 items: high-gain audio transmitters, coin-sized, magnetic, and battery life that lasted a week. I went to work. I placed the first bug under the kitchen island, right where Ivy took her morning coffee. The second went behind the headboard of our bed. The third I took out to the driveway. I slid under Ivy's SUV and attached it to the chassis, directly under the driver's seat. Then I went back inside, grabbed a pillow and a blanket, and lay down on the couch. I put my noise-canceling headphones on, connected them to the receiver unit, and waited. I didn't sleep. I watched the ceiling fan spin, my mind replaying Dominic's words. The mother is on board. Morning came slow and gray. At 7 a.m., I heard movement upstairs. Ivy came down a few minutes later, wearing her silk robe, looking like a ghost. She didn't see me on the couch at first. She went straight to the kitchen, made coffee, and immediately picked up her phone. I tapped the receiver on my tablet. The audio from the kitchen bug came through crystal clear. Pick up, damn it," Ivy whispered. Her voice was shaking. A pause. Then, a click. "You shouldn't be calling me this early," a male voice answered. Dominic. Even through the speaker, his arrogance made my skin crawl. "He knows something, Dom," Ivy hissed. "He found the railing bolts. Or he suspects. He asked me about the VIP deck again. So? He's guessing. He has no proof. He's not stupid. You told me he was just a dumb soldier. You said he'd be too emotional to think straight. But he looked at me last night, like he wanted to interrogate me. Calm down, Ivy. You're being paranoid. Did you sign the papers?" "No." He tore them up. "I told you. Fine. We'll do it the hard way. But you need to keep him under control. If he starts digging into the accounts, or if he talks to the staff, we have a problem. I can't control him, Dom. He's intense." And Ryder woke up. He said something about being pushed. There was a silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. Kids imagine things, Dominic said finally. His voice had lost its smooth edge. It was sharp now. Dangerous. Make sure he understands that. It was an accident. He fell. If he says anything else, you tell the doctors it's the trauma talking. Do you understand me? We are too close to the merger to let a clumsy kid ruin this. He's my son, Dominic. Ivy's voice cracked. He's in a hospital bed. And I'm the one paying for that bed, Dominic snapped. And I'm the one who paid off your credit card debt last month. Remember that. You wanted this life, Ivy. You wanted the upgrades. You wanted out of that boring military wife routine. Well, this is the cost of admission. Fix it. The line clicked dead. I took off the headphones. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. From a cold, focused rage I hadn't felt since my last tour in Afghanistan. She wasn't just scared of him. She was indebted to him. She had sold us out for what? Credit card bills? Excitement? A break from the boring life of being loved by a man who would die for her? Ivy walked into the living room a moment later, clutching her coffee mug. She jumped when she saw me sitting there. Hunter. She put a hand to her chest. I didn't know you were awake. Just woke up, I lied. My voice was steady. Who were you on the phone with? She froze. Just for a second. My mom. Just updating her on Ryder. How is she? I asked, watching her eyes. She's worried. Obviously. I stood up. I walked over to her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her until the truth fell out. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed more than a phone call. I needed to know the full extent of the rot. I'm going to the hospital, I said. You coming? I have to shower first, she said, avoiding my gaze. I'll meet you there. Okay. I kissed her on the forehead. It felt like kissing a stranger. Don't be long. I walked out to my truck. I didn't go to the hospital immediately. I drove a block away and parked, pulling up the tracker on my tablet. 10 minutes later, the dot representing Ivy's car started moving. She wasn't going to the hospital. She was heading north, toward the bank district. And then, she turned, toward the zoo. I waited until she was a mile out. Then I started the engine. If she was going to the lion's den, I was going to follow her. But I wasn't just watching anymore. I needed leverage. I needed a witness who wasn't on Dominic's payroll. I remembered the name from the logbook I'd seen last night. The one entry that wasn't OFF duty. A janitor who had clocked out at 11:30 a.m., just 30 minutes before the accident. Blake. I pulled up my contacts. I had a buddy in the NSA who owed me a favor. I typed a message. Need an address for a Blake Miller, works at Sanctuary Zoo. Urgent. 2 minutes later, a ping. 402, East 4th Street Apartment, 3B. I looked at the tracker. Ivy was parked at the zoo, probably getting her marching orders from Dominic. I turned my truck toward East 4th Street. Dominic thought he had cleared the board. He thought he had silenced everyone. But you always miss someone. There's always a loose thread. And I was going to pull it until the whole thing unraveled. East 4th Street wasn't a place people went on purpose. It was a block of tired, brick apartment buildings with peeling paint and fire escapes that looked like they'd snap if a cat sat on them. The air smelled of stale cigarettes and damp concrete. Apartment 3B was on the top floor. The buzzer next to the name B. Miller was cracked. I pressed it. No answer. I pressed it again, holding it down. A muffled voice yelled from the intercom. Go away. I ain't buying nothing. I'm not selling anything, I said into the speaker. My name is Hunter. I need to talk to you about the zoo. Silence. I could feel him listening on the other end. I'm not the police, I added. And I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to get justice for my son. Another long pause. Then, a sharp buzz unlocked the front door. I took the stairs 2 at a time. The door to 3B was already cracked open. A silver chain lock stretched taut. A single, terrified eye peered through the gap. The man looked barely out of his teens, with a thin, pale face and a smattering of acne across his forehead. This was Blake. What do you want? He whispered, his voice shaking. Just to talk, I said calmly. I kept my hands visible, away from my pockets. I know you were on duty yesterday. I know you saw something. I just want to know what it was. I didn't see anything, he said, trying to shut the door. I put my foot in the way, not with force, but just enough to stop it from closing. My son's name is Ryder, I said softly. He's 7. He's in a coma right now. The doctors don't know if he'll walk again. He told me a man pushed him. I think you saw that man. Blake's face crumpled. His one visible eye welled up with tears. He fumbled with the chain, his hands trembling so badly he could barely unlatch it. He opened the door and stumbled back into his small, cluttered apartment. You can't be here, he stammered, wringing his hands. If he finds out you were here. If who finds out? Dominic. Blake flinched at the name, nodding frantically. He told me to keep my mouth shut. He paid me $5,000. He said if I ever spoke about it, he'd make sure I never worked in this town again. Or worse. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Worse how? He didn't have to say. Blake whispered, staring at the floor. Everyone knows. He owns this town. The cops, the judges, everyone. But he doesn't own me, I said. Tell me what you saw, Blake. From the beginning. He sank onto a worn-out couch, burying his face in his hands. I was doing my final rounds, he began, his voice muffled. Getting the trash bins from the VIP deck area. It was supposed to be empty. But I heard a kid crying. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. I peeked around the corner. I saw Mr. Thorne, Dominic, up on the deck. He was with a woman. A beautiful woman with blonde hair. Ivy. They were kissing, Blake continued. And the little boy, your son, he saw them. He started yelling. That's not my daddy. My blood ran cold. The woman looked panicked. She tried to grab the boy, but he ran. He ran right to the railing. Dominic went after him. He was angry and drunk. I could smell the whiskey on him from 10 feet away. Blake took a shaky breath. He grabbed your son by the arm. He lifted him up. He was holding him over the edge of the railing. My fists clenched so tight my knuckles went white. He was laughing. Blake choked out. He said, see the kitty? Tigers eat little boys who tell secrets. He was trying to scare him. Just trying to scare him into being quiet. And then what? I demanded, my voice a low growl. His hand slipped. Blake sobbed. I saw it. He was too drunk. He wasn't paying attention. He lost his grip. Your son. He fell. It happened so fast. 1 second he was there, the next he was gone. And then there was screaming. The tiger. He couldn't finish. He just sat there, rocking back and forth. So it wasn't a deliberate push. It was something so much worse. It was drunken, arrogant carelessness. Dominic had treated my son's life like a toy, and he had dropped it. The woman, I said. What did she do? She screamed. She just stood there screaming. But Dominic, he didn't run to help. He ran to the side of the deck. I saw him fiddling with the security camera box on the wall. He was yanking out wires. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. That confirmed everything. The malfunction wasn't an accident. The railing wasn't negligence. It was a playground for a rich monster and his mistress. Did you get it on video? I asked. Blake shook his head. No, I was too scared. But after he ran downstairs, I pulled out my phone. I recorded what happened next. He fumbled for his phone on the coffee table, his hands still shaking. He tapped the screen a few times and then turned it toward me. The video was shaky, filmed from behind a large potted plant. It showed the aftermath. Ivy was on her knees by the railing, hysterical. But the camera panned down to Dominic. He wasn't looking at my son in the pit. He was on the phone, pacing. It's handled, Dominic's voice said, tinny through the phone's speaker. Get down here. And bring the checkbook. We're going to need to do some damage control. The mother is a mess, but she'll play along. She has no choice. It wasn't proof of the fall, but it was proof of the cover-up. It proved he lied about being in his office. It proved he was coordinating a plan from the moment Ryder hit the ground. Send that to me. I ordered. Blake nodded, his fingers fumbling as he texted the file. My phone buzzed a moment later. I had it. I had my first piece of leverage. Thank you, Blake, I said. You did the right thing. I turned to leave, but he scrambled to his feet and grabbed my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. "You don't get it," he said, his eyes wild with fear. "You think you can fight him? He's not just a rich guy with lawyers. He's got people. Dangerous people. Last year, a reporter was writing a story about the zoo's finances. He got in a car accident. Hit and run. He's been in a wheelchair ever since. They never found the driver. He let go of my arm. You need to be careful. He'll find out you talk to me. He'll come after you. And he won't be bringing a checkbook next time." I nodded slowly, the weight of his words settling in my gut. This wasn't just a civil case anymore. This was a war against a man who buried his problems. I walked out of the apartment building and into the stark afternoon light. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I expected it to be the hospital, or maybe Ivy with another lie. But it was a text from an unknown number. There were no words. Just a single, high-resolution photo. It was a picture of me, walking out of Blake's apartment building, taken from a car across the street. My blood turned to ice. They were already watching me. Blake was right. Dominic wasn't just reacting. He was hunting, too. The photo on my phone made my skin crawl. It was taken from a low angle, likely from a car parked across the street. The timestamp was 2 minutes ago. Someone was shadowing me. Someone was reporting my every move back to Dominic. I didn't run to my truck. I walked, calm and steady, scanning the street. A black sedan with tinted windows was idling 3 cars down. As soon as I looked directly at it, the engine revved and it pulled away, tires screeching, disappearing around the corner before I could catch the plate number. Professional, or close enough to it. I got into my truck and locked the doors. I needed to get this video to the police. I needed to show them Dominic's lies. But then I remembered Blake's warning. He owns the cops. And I remembered Officer Grant at the hospital, dismissing my questions, warning me to let it go. If I walked into a police station now, that video would accidentally get corrupted or lost before a detective ever saw it. I decided to go straight to the hospital. I needed to see Ryder. I needed to make sure he was safe. If they were watching me, they knew I was getting close. And a cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. I drove fast, weaving through traffic, checking my mirrors every few seconds. No one followed me this time. When I pulled up to St. Jude's, there was a police cruiser parked right at the main entrance. 2 uniformed officers were standing by the sliding doors, arms crossed. I didn't think much of it until I got out of my truck. As I approached the doors, one of the officers stepped forward, blocking my path. "Hunter?" he asked. "Not Mr. Hunter. Just Hunter." "Yeah. What's going on?" The officer held out a piece of paper. "You need to come with us, sir. We have a court order." "A court order? For what?" I snatched the paper. My eyes scanned the legalese, my brain struggling to process the words. Temporary restraining order. Petitioner, Ivy Hunter. Protected parties, Ivy Hunter, Ryder Hunter. My stomach dropped. This is a joke. Ivy filed this. The order states you have exhibited erratic, violent behavior consistent with untreated PTSD. The officer recited, his voice monotone. You are barred from coming within 500 feet of your wife or son. That includes this hospital. Violent behavior? I shouted, stepping forward. I haven't touched anyone. My son is in a coma upstairs because of a man who threw him into a tiger pit. And you're stopping me. The second officer put his hand on his taser. Sir, step back. Do not make this difficult. Where is she? I demanded, looking up at the hospital windows. Where is Ivy? She's inside, safe, the officer said. And she gave a sworn statement to the judge an hour ago. She said you threatened her last night. Said you were paranoid, breaking things, talking about conspiracies. The bugs. The questions. She had twisted everything. She's lying. I said, my voice shaking with rage. Dominic put her up to this. He's trying to isolate me. That's for the court to decide, the officer said. Right now, the law says you leave, or we arrest you. I looked at the officers. I looked at the hospital entrance. I could take them. I knew exactly how to disarm the one with the taser and incapacitate the other in under 5 seconds. I could fight my way upstairs. And then what? I'd be in jail. Dominic would win. He'd have his narrative, the crazy soldier who snapped. I took a deep breath, forcing my hands to unclench. I forced the red haze out of my vision. Fine, I spat. I'm leaving. I turned and walked back to my truck, feeling the officer's eyes burning into my back. I got inside and slammed the door, screaming in frustration. I punched the steering wheel until my knuckles bled. They had taken my son. They had taken my wife. And now they had taken my ability to even be a father. My phone buzzed. A text from Ivy. I'm sorry, Hunter. Dominic said it was the only way to keep Ryder safe. Please just go away. Don't fight him. He'll kill you. She wasn't doing this because she hated me. She was doing it because she was terrified. Dominic had her so twisted up she thought destroying our family was the only way to save it. But she was wrong. Running wouldn't save us. I drove away from the hospital, but I didn't go home. I couldn't go home. The order probably barred me from there, too. And besides, that house wasn't safe. It was bugged, compromised. I pulled into the parking lot of a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind of place that took cash and didn't ask for ID. I threw my bag on the stained bedspread and paced the small room. The law was against me. The police were bought. My wife was a hostage to her own fear. I was alone. Or was I? I stopped pacing. I reached into my bag and pulled out a burner phone, standard issue for off-grid comms. I dialed a number I hadn't used in 3 years. It rang twice. Talk to me. A gruff voice answered. It's Hunter, I said. I need the wolf pack. There was a pause. Then, the voice shifted. The gruffness vanished, replaced by sharp, professional alertness. Location. Home. But it's not a visit. It's a mission. What's the ROE? Rules of engagement. Domestic. High-value target with local law enforcement cover. Kidnapping. Attempted murder. Corruption. And he has my family. Say no more, the voice said. We're wheels up in 2 hours. Who do we need? Everyone, I said. Bring the tech guy, bring the heavy hitter, and bring the lawyer. Copy that. Sit tight, brother. Reinforcements are coming. I hung up the phone and stared at the motel wall. Dominic thought he had won. He thought a piece of paper and a scared woman were enough to stop a special forces operator. He didn't understand. He had just changed the battlefield. He wanted to play dirty? Fine. We were about to play by my rules. The motel room smelled like stale smoke and desperation, but for the next 48 hours, it was command central. I pushed the twin beds against the wall to make room. I taped black trash bags over the windows. I set up my laptop on the rickety desk, creating a secure local network that bypassed the motel's flimsy Wi-Fi. Dominic had stripped me of my legal rights, my home, and access to my family. He thought that would break me. He thought I'd be crying in a bar somewhere. He forgot that when you take away a soldier's rules, you don't make him harmless. You make him dangerous. 6 hours after my call, the cavalry arrived. There was a knock at the door, 3 sharp raps, a pause, then 2 more. The code. I opened it to find 3 men standing in the flickering hallway light. They didn't look like soldiers. They looked like civilians, jeans, t-shirts, baseball caps. But the way they stood, scanning the perimeter, weight balanced on the balls of their feet, you can't fake that. Boss, said the man in front. Tank. 6'4", built like a brick wall, with a smile that could disarm a bomb or start a bar fight. He was our heavy hitter. Behind him was Ghost. Small, wiry, wearing thick glasses. He didn't speak, just nodded. He was the best cyber warfare specialist the Army had ever accidentally discharged. And finally, Victor. He wasn't military, not technically. He was a JAG lawyer turned private fixer, the guy you called when the law needed a little bending. He was wearing a suit that cost more than this entire motel. You look like hell, Hunter, Victor said, stepping inside and wrinkling his nose at the smell. Good to see you too, I said, locking the door behind them. You get the brief? We got it, Tank said, dropping a heavy duffel bag on the floor. It clanked with the sound of metal. Not guns. Tech surveillance gear. So, let me get this straight. Rich zoo guy throws your kid to the tigers, buys the cops, steals your wife. and now we're gonna burn his life down. Pretty much, I said. I love weekends off, Tank grinned. All right, listen up, I said, pointing to the map of the town I'd taped to the wall. Target is Dominic Thorne. He thinks he's untouchable. He's got the sheriff in his pocket and a judge on speed dial. We can't touch him physically, not yet. We need to destroy his leverage. The money, Victor said. You cut off the money, you cut off the power. Exactly, I said. Ghost, I need you inside his digital life. Bank accounts, emails, cloud storage. I want to know where every dollar comes from and where it goes. I want to know who he's paying off. Ghost sat down at the desk, cracking his knuckles. Give me an hour. If it's online, I own it. Tank, I continued. You're on recon. I need eyes on the zoo. I need to know his schedule, who comes in and out of that office. And I need you to find out where he keeps his hard files. Guys like this always have a paper trail they don't trust to the cloud. Consider me a fly on the wall, Tank said. And Victor, I looked at the lawyer. I need you to dig into the legal side. The restraining order, the custody battle that's coming. I need a strategy to flip Ivy. She's scared, not evil. If we can show her Dominic is going down, she might turn. I'll start drafting the counter motions, Victor said. And I'll run a background check on that judge. If he signed a bogus restraining order that fast, he's got skeletons. While the team went to work, I sat on the floor, cleaning my sidearm. It was a rhythmic, calming motion. Disassemble. Clean. Oil. Reassemble. 2 hours later, Ghost spun around in his chair. Got something, he said. His voice was flat, serious. We all gathered around the small laptop screen. I'm in his private server, Ghost explained. It's encrypted, but his password was Panther1. Idiot. Anyway, look at the financials for the zoo. He pointed to a spreadsheet. The sanctuary has been losing money for 5 years. Ticket sales are down 40%. Maintenance costs are through the roof. So how is he paying off sheriffs and judges? Tank asked. That's the interesting part, Ghost said. He has a shell company called Exotic Logistics. It receives massive wire transfers every month from accounts in Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe. Millions of dollars. Drugs? I asked. No. Ghost clicked a folder labeled manifests. Check the shipping logs. Photos popped up on the screen. Crates. Wooden crates marked fragile. Art supplies. But Ghost opened another file. Photos taken inside the crates before shipping. They weren't art supplies. Tiger bone wine, Ghost said quietly. Ivory tusks. Rhino horn. Snow leopard pelts. The room went silent. He's not just a zoo owner, I realized, a sick feeling rising in my throat. He's a trafficker. He's breeding animals to slaughter them and sell the parts on the black market. That's federal, Victor said, adjusting his glasses. That's RICO. That's 20 years to life. And look at the date on this last shipment, Ghost pointed. 2 days ago, the day of the accident. It clicked. The pieces fell into place like a magazine locking into a rifle. Ivy wasn't just there for a tour, I said, staring at the screen. Dominic was probably closing a deal. Or celebrating one. He was drunk. High on the success of a shipment. And Ryder was just in the way. This is it, I said, standing up. This is the nuke. Do we call the feds? Tank asked. Not yet, I said. If we call the FBI now, they'll launch an investigation. It could take months. Dominic could destroy evidence, pay people off, or flee the country. And my son is still stuck in that town with him. I looked at the map again. We don't just want him arrested, I said. We want him exposed. We want him to confess. And we want Ivy to hear it. How? Victor asked. We're going to set a trap, I said. He's greedy. He's arrogant. And he thinks he's won. So we're going to offer him the one thing he can't resist. More money. Tank guessed. No, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. A bigger market. I turned to Ghost. Can you fake a digital identity? Make us look like buyers? Big-time buyers from Dubai. Ghost smirked. I can make you look like the Prince of Abu Dhabi if you want. Good, I said. Tank, get your suit ready. You're going to be the front man. Victor, you're the legal counsel. I'll be the security detail. We're going to walk right into his office, I said, and we're going to make him sell us his own destruction. The plan was simple, which meant it had 1,000 ways to go wrong. Ghost spent the night building a digital legend for Al Hassan Global Imports, a shell company supposedly based in Dubai with deep pockets and shallow morals. By morning, we had a website, fake bank statements showing 9 figures, and email traffic that looked legitimate to anyone but a forensic accountant. Tank was transformed. The t-shirt and jeans were gone, replaced by a bespoke Italian suit Victor had overnight. With a pair of aviator sunglasses and a Rolex, a knockoff, but a good one, he looked every bit the shady international broker. I shaved my beard, cut my hair high and tight, and put on a generic black suit and earpiece. I was the muscle, silent, menacing, invisible. If Dominic saw me, the whole thing would blow. But I was betting on his arrogance. He didn't see people like me. He saw furniture. Victor made the call. Mr. Thorne, Victor said into the phone, his voice polished and professional. I represent a client interested in exclusive acquisitions. We understand you have a unique supply chain. We're in town for 24 hours. My client would like to discuss a bulk purchase. 7 figures. Cash. Dominic took the bait instantly. Greed is a predictable drug. I can fit you in at 2 p.m., Dominic said. Come to the sanctuary. Admin building. At 1:45 p.m., a rented black Mercedes SUV pulled up to the zoo gates. Tank sat in the back. Victor drove. I was in the passenger seat, wearing dark glasses and a hat pulled low. We rolled past the security booth. The guard waved us through. Showtime, Tank muttered into his comms. We parked in front of the main office. I got out first, scanning the perimeter. I opened the back door for Tank. He stepped out, adjusting his cuffs, looking like he owned the pavement he stood on. We walked into the lobby. The receptionist, a young girl who looked bored, perked up immediately at the sight of the suit. Mr. Thorne is expecting us, Victor said. Right this way. She led us down a hallway lined with photos of Dominic shaking hands with mayors and celebrities. We reached a heavy oak door at the end. Inside, Dominic was waiting. He sat behind a massive desk, flanked by 2 large security guards of his own. Ivy wasn't there. Good. Gentlemen, Dominic said, not standing up. He gestured to the leather chairs opposite him. Please, sit. Tank sat. Victor sat. I stood by the door, hands clasped in front of me, head down. Mr. Thorne, Tank began, his accent a subtle, cultivated international blur. Thank you for seeing us. Let's not waste time. My employers are looking for exotic materials. Specifically, tiger bone wine and snow leopard pelts. We hear you are the man to see in this region. Dominic chuckled, leaning back. You hear a lot of things. But those items are illegal, gentlemen. This is a conservation sanctuary. We save animals here. He was testing us. Of course, Tank smiled, pulling a tablet from his briefcase. He slid it across the desk. Just as these transfers from exotic logistics are for art supplies. Dominic looked at the screen. It showed the very banking records Ghost had hacked. His eyes widened slightly. We did our homework, Tank said smoothly. We know you move product. We know your current buyers in Southeast Asia are paying you 40% below market value. We are offering double. Dominic stared at Tank for a long moment. Then he looked at the 2 guards. Then back at the tablet. The greed one. Double? Dominic asked. Cash on delivery, Tank confirmed. But we need volume. We need to know you can supply the demand. Can you guarantee inventory? Dominic relaxed. He poured himself a glass of water from a crystal pitcher. Gentlemen, I have a breeding program that is entirely off the books. I have 12 cubs due next month. Inventory is not a problem. And the authorities? Victor asked, playing the nervous lawyer perfectly. We need discretion. We heard there was an incident recently. A child. Dominic waved his hand dismissively. A minor inconvenience. The father is a nobody, some soldier with PTSD. The mother is under my thumb. The police are handled. The local sheriff eats out of my hand. There is zero risk. I felt my jaw tighten so hard my teeth ached. A nobody. And the mother? Tank pressed. She won't talk. Ivy. Dominic laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. Ivy does what she's told. She likes the lifestyle too much. I bought her a new car last week, and she forgot all about her morals. She's useful for access, but she's weak. She'll testify whatever I tell her to testify. Tank nodded slowly. Impressive operation, Mr. Thorne. It's not just an operation, Dominic boasted, standing up and walking to a wall map. It's an empire. I control the supply chain from here to Shanghai. And now, with your investment, we can expand. We'd like to inspect the goods, Tank said, before we transfer the funds. Naturally, Dominic said. Tonight. The warehouse behind the reptile house. 10 p.m. Bring the cash. We'll be there, Tank said, standing up. We walked out. I kept my head down until we were back in the SUV. As soon as the doors closed, Tank let out a long breath. Did we get it? He asked. I pulled a small pin from my lapel. It was a camera, audio and video, 4K resolution. He admitted to everything, Victor said, shaking his head. Traffic, bribery, obstruction of justice, witness tampering. And he buried Ivy. We have enough for the feds now, Tank said. No, I said, staring at the zoo as we drove away. The feds get him for the animals. That's 10 years, maybe less with good behavior. I want him for what he did to my son. We have the court hearing tomorrow morning for the restraining order, Victor reminded me. It's a civil hearing. Exactly, I said. That's where we dropped the bomb. In open court. In front of the press. In front of the judge he thinks he owns. And Ivy? Victor asked. She'll be there. That's the point, I said. She needs to hear what he really thinks of her. She needs to hear him call her weak and bought. It's risky, Hunter, Victor warned. If the judge shuts down the evidence. Then we go to Plan B, I said. But tomorrow, we walk into that courtroom. And we don't just clear my name. We end him. I looked at the pin camera in my hand. It was small, but it held the weight of a nuclear warhead. Dominic Thorne wanted a war. He just sold the ammunition to the enemy. The courthouse was an old stone building that smelled of floor wax and injustice. Reporters were already swarming the steps when we arrived. Dominic had spun the narrative well. Hero Zoo owner protects family from deranged soldier father. I walked up the steps in my dress blues. Not a suit. My uniform. Medals gleaming on my chest, my rank insignia polished. Tank and Victor walked beside me, flanked by Ghost, who was carrying a secure laptop case like it was the nuclear football. Cameras flashed. Microphones were shoved in my face. Mr. Hunter, is it true you threatened your wife? Did you really try to attack the hospital staff? Do you have PTSD, Sergeant? I didn't say a word. I just stared straight ahead and marched through the doors. Inside courtroom 4B, Dominic was already seated. He looked relaxed, whispering something to his high-priced lawyer. Ivy was sitting next to him. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Pale, trembling, staring at her hands. She wouldn't look at me. The judge entered. Judge Weaver. The man Dominic claimed to own. We are here for the matter of Thorne versus Hunter regarding the restraining order and emergency custody, Judge Weaver droned. Mr. Thorne, you may proceed. Dominic's lawyer stood up. He painted a picture of me as a monster. A ticking time bomb. He cited my deployments, my violent training, and the outburst at the hospital. Your Honor, the lawyer concluded, Mr. Hunter is a danger to himself and others. We ask that the restraining order be made permanent and full custody be granted to the mother under the protective supervision of Mr. Thorne. Judge Weaver nodded, looking bored. And does the respondent have anything to say? Victor stood up. Actually, Your Honor, we do. We have a counter-motion to dismiss. And we have new evidence relevant to the character and credibility of the petitioner. Evidence? Dominic's lawyer scoffed. This is a simple hearing. What evidence? Video evidence, Victor said calmly. I won't allow a circus, Judge Weaver snapped. What is on this video? The truth, I said, standing up. My voice carried to the back of the room. The truth about why my son fell. And the truth about who really runs this town. Dominic turned in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. He thought I was bluffing. He thought I was going to show the shaky cell phone video from Blake. Proceed, the judge sighed. But make it quick. Ghost connected the laptop to the courtroom's AV system. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. It wasn't the zoo footage. It was the interior of Dominic's office, recorded yesterday afternoon. The courtroom went silent as the video played. The image was crystal clear. There was Tank, posing as the buyer. And there was Dominic, leaning back in his chair. I have a breeding program that is entirely off the books. Tiger bone wine, snow leopard pelts. Gasps rippled through the gallery. The reporters in the back started typing furiously. Dominic's face went white. He stood up. Objection. This is faked. Deep fake technology. Sit down, Mr. Thorne, Judge Weaver ordered, his own face paling. He realized instantly that this wasn't just a civil case anymore. This was his career ending if he looked complicit. The video continued. The father is a nobody, some soldier with PTSD. The mother is under my thumb. The police are handled. The local sheriff eats out of my hand. I looked at the sheriff, who was standing by the door. He was slowly inching toward the exit. Tank stepped in front of him, arms crossed. The sheriff stopped. But the real blow was yet to come. On screen, Tank asked about Ivy. Ivy. Dominic's voice laughed through the speakers. Ivy does what she's told. She likes the lifestyle too much. She's useful for access, but she's weak. She'll testify whatever I tell her to testify. I looked at Ivy. Her head snapped up. Her eyes locked onto the screen, then onto Dominic. The shock on her face was raw. Real. The man she had betrayed her family for. He didn't love her. He didn't even respect her. She was just a tool. A weak pawn. Turn it off. Dominic screamed, lunging toward the lawyer's table. Turn it off. Sit down, the bailiff shouted, grabbing Dominic's arm. Your Honor, Victor said, his voice cutting through the chaos. That is admission of federal crimes. Trafficking. Bribery. Witness tampering. But we have one more thing. Ghost clicked a file. Audio only this time. It was the recording from the bug I placed in the kitchen. Ivy's voice. He's my son, Dominic. He's in a hospital bed. Dominic's voice. And I'm the one paying for that bed. You wanted this life. Fix it. The audio ended. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. I walked toward the witness stand. I looked at Ivy. He called you weak, Ivy, I said softly. He called you bought. Are you? Tears were streaming down her face. She looked at Dominic, who was glaring at her with pure hatred now. The mask was gone. The charm was gone. There was only the monster. Ivy stood up slowly. Her legs were shaking. Mrs. Hunter, the judge said. Do you have something to say? He lying, Ivy whispered. Who is lying? The judge asked. Ivy pointed a trembling finger at Dominic. He told me to lie, she sobbed, her voice gaining strength. He told me if I didn't blame Hunter, he would stop paying the bills. He said he would ruin us. He was the one who dropped Ryder. Liar, Dominic roared. She's crazy. She's trying to save herself. He was drunk. Ivy screamed back, the dam finally breaking. He was dangling him over the edge to scare him. He let him go. He let my baby go. Pandemonium. The judge hammered his gavel, but no one listened. The reporters were shouting questions. The sheriff was trying to push past Tank. And in the middle of it all, Dominic Thorne looked at me. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood there, in my uniform, watching his empire crumble to dust. Bailiff, Judge Weaver shouted, trying to salvage his own reputation. Take Mr. Thorne into custody immediately. And someone get the federal marshals on the phone. As the handcuffs clicked around Dominic's wrists, he wasn't looking at the judge. He was looking at me. His eyes promised murder. But I wasn't done. Wait, I said. We're not finished. Not finished, the judge asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. Mr. Hunter, he's being arrested. That's for the animals, I said, pointing at the screen where the Tiger King evidence was still paused. And for the bribery. But there's one more crime here. One that he didn't do alone. I turned my gaze to Ivy. You didn't just lie, Ivy, I said. You helped him launder the money. The courtroom was already a powder keg, but my words lit the final fuse. Launder money? Judge Weaver repeated, his voice straining. Mr. Hunter, make your point. The restraining order was a distraction, I said, walking towards the defense table. I didn't look at Dominic, who was struggling against the bailiff's grip. I looked straight at my wife. The affair was a distraction. The real reason Ivy was at the zoo so often wasn't just romance. It was business. I nodded to Ghost. A new document appeared on the screen. It was a bank statement, but not Dominic's. It was a joint account. Ivy Hunter and Dominic Thorne Consulting. Gasped from the gallery. Ivy froze, her tears stopping instantly. The look of betrayal on her face vanished, replaced by the cold, hard mask of fear. Exotic Logistics didn't just pay Dominic. I explained, my voice steady but feeling like gravel in my throat. It paid this consulting firm. And from there, the money moved. Small transfers. Under $10,000 to avoid IRS flags. Into crypto wallets. Into offshore trusts. I pointed at the screen. Look at the dates. Every time a shipment of Tiger parts left the dock, a deposit hit this account. And who signed the incorporation papers for the consulting firm? Ghost zoomed in on the signature line. Ivy Hunter. No. Ivy whispered, shaking her head. I didn't know. He told me it was for tax purposes. He said it was just to help him manage the zoo's renovation funds. I didn't know it was illegal. You didn't know? I asked, stepping closer. Ivy, you're a CPA? You used to do audits for the city. You expect me to believe you didn't notice $500,000 moving through a shell company with no employees and no product? She flinched as if I'd slapped her. I trusted him, she wailed, turning to the judge. He said he was setting up a future for us. For Ryder. He said Hunter would never make real money in the military, that we needed a nest egg. So you sold out your family for a nest egg built on slaughtered animals. I asked. I didn't know about the animals, she screamed. I swear, Hunter. I thought it was just creative accounting. I thought I was helping him save the zoo. Ignorance is not a defense for money laundering, Mrs. Hunter. Victor interjected from our table. Especially when you are a licensed accountant. Dominic, realizing the ship was truly sinking, decided to throw the last of his cargo overboard. He stopped struggling against the bailiff and let out a harsh, barking laugh. She knew. Dominic shouted, a cruel smile twisting his face. She knew everything. Who do you think suggested the VIP tours for the buyers? It was her idea. Make them feel special, she said. Show them the product up close. She was the one who brought the buyers to the deck that day. That's why Ryder was there. She was helping me close the deal. The courtroom erupted. Ivy stared at Dominic, her mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out. The betrayal was absolute. They were eating each other alive. That's a lie. Ivy shrieked, lunging at him. You monster. You dropped my son. And you helped me cover it up to save your commission. Dominic spat back. Order. Order. Judge Weaver banged his gavel so hard the wood handle cracked. Bailiff, arrest them both. Federal marshals are en route. Secure this courtroom. 2 more officers rushed in. They grabbed Ivy. She didn't fight them. She just went limp, her eyes finding mine across the room. Hunter, she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. Please. Ryder needs his mother. I looked at her. I saw the woman I had married 10 years ago. The woman I had promised to protect. But that woman was gone. She had died the moment she chose a paycheck over our son's safety. Ryder needs a parent who won't sell him, I said. He has one. Me. I turned my back on her. The doors at the back of the courtroom burst open. 6 men in windbreakers marked FBI marched in. They didn't look at the judge. They went straight for Dominic and Ivy. Dominic Thorne, Ivy Hunter, you are under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, and violation of the Lacey Act, the lead agent announced. Dominic was dragged out, still shouting threats. Ivy was led away in silence. Her head hung low, sobbing into her hands. The reporters were shouting questions at me, cameras flashing like strobe lights. Mr. Hunter, how does it feel? Did you know your wife was involved? What will happen to the zoo? I ignored them all. I signaled to Tank and Victor. We're done here, I said. We walked out of the courtroom, leaving the chaos behind. We walked down the courthouse steps, past the news vans, past the onlookers. I took a deep breath of the fresh air. It tasted clean. Where to, boss? Tank asked as we reached the SUV. The hospital, I said. I have a promise to keep. I got into the car, but before I closed the door, I looked back at the courthouse one last time. Justice wasn't a gavel banging. It wasn't a prison sentence. Justice was the fact that when my son woke up, the monsters would be gone. Drive, I said. The war was over, but the healing was just beginning. I walked into the ICU, and the entire atmosphere had changed. The two police officers who had barred my entry were gone. In their place stood a single, young-looking officer who saw my uniform and immediately stood a little straighter. He just nodded at me as I passed. The restraining order was ash, just like the rest of Dominic's empire. The door to Ryder's room was slightly ajar. A nurse was inside, checking his monitors. She saw me and gave me a warm, genuine smile. He's been stirring, she whispered. He woke up once for a few minutes. Kept asking for his dad. My heart, which had been a block of ice for 3 days, finally started to thaw. I walked to his bedside. He looked so small against the white sheets, his face still pale, but the tension was gone from his brow. His leg was in a new, cleaner cast. The web of wires was smaller. I sat down in the chair, the same one I'd been thrown out of, and took his hand. It was warm. Hey, buddy, I whispered. It's Dad. I'm here. His eyelids fluttered. Slowly, groggily, they opened. His eyes, hazy with medication, tried to focus on me. Dad, he rasped, his voice weak. Yeah, Ryder. I'm right here. Tears welled up in his eyes. The bad man, he whispered. He pushed me. I know, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I squeezed his hand gently. I know he did, but you don't have to worry about him anymore. He's gone. He can never, ever hurt you again. I promise. A single tear rolled down his cheek. He looked around the room, confused. Where's Mommy? It was the question I had been dreading. Mommy has to go away for a while, I said carefully. She's sick in a way. She needs some help. But I'm here, and I'm never leaving you again. He seemed to accept that, too tired to ask more. He closed his eyes, his breathing evening out. His small hand didn't let go of mine. I sat there for hours, watching him sleep, feeling the weight of the world finally lift from my shoulders. The war was over. My son was safe. That was all that mattered. 6 months later, the legal system moved slowly, but it moved. Dominic Thorne was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison for racketeering and illegal trafficking. With the bribery charges, he'll likely never see the outside world again. The sanctuary zoo was shut down, its assets seized, and the animals were relocated to legitimate conservation centers. The sheriff and the judge were both disgraced, forced into early retirement under threat of prosecution. Ivy, in exchange for her full cooperation and testimony, received a lighter sentence. 5 years. She lost her accounting license. She lost every penny she had made with Dominic. And in a quiet, final hearing, she willingly relinquished all parental rights to Ryder. I got the letter from her lawyer, a single handwritten page filled with apologies I couldn't bring myself to read yet. Maybe one day. But today wasn't that day. Today, the sun was bright, dappling through the tall pine trees. The air smelled of clean earth and lake water. We were 1,000 miles away from that city, from that courthouse, from that hospital. I'd sold the house and never looked back. I cast my fishing line into the still, blue water. A moment later, a smaller line plopped into the water beside mine. I looked over at Ryder. He stood on the edge of the dock, wearing a life vest over his hoodie. He had a slight limp when he ran, but the doctors said even that would fade with time. The physical scars were healing. The emotional ones, we were working on those together. Think you'll catch a bigger one than me? I asked, ruffling his hair. He grinned, that same soft smile he'd always had. Definitely. I'm a better hunter than you. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh that came from deep in my chest. Yeah? I think you might be right. We sat there in comfortable silence, our lines in the water, the mountains watching over us like silent sentinels. I wasn't a soldier anymore. I'd taken an honorable discharge. My new mission was here, on this dock. My new mission was teaching my son how to tie a fishing knot, helping him with his homework, and making sure he never, ever had to be afraid again. He had been through a nightmare, but he was resilient. He was a survivor. He was my son, and I was his dad. Finally, fully, that was all I had to be. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Your presence here makes telling these stories possible, and it truly means the world to us. We are always so curious about where our stories travel. Please, take a moment and let us know in the comments what city or country you're watching from tonight. It helps us feel connected to you, our incredible audience, across the miles. If this story of a father's unbreakable bond and his fight for justice touched your heart, consider becoming part of our Betrayal Stories Lab family. The best way to support us is by hitting that subscribe button and giving this video a like. It's the single greatest way to ensure we can keep bringing these powerful narratives to light. And now, we have a question for you. What kind of story do you want to experience next? A tale of quiet revenge against a manipulative boss? A story of a family secret that shatters a lifetime of lies? Let us know in the comments what you'd love to hear. We create these for you, and your voice matters most. We are already working on our next thrilling story of heartbreak and epic revenge. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.